Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2, the show where I read the Tanakh and provide my own interpretations of what I think it all means. This week's episode falls on the 23rd of Tammuz, 5785, July 19th, 2025. It is the portion for Pinchas, but we're going to be continuing in the book of Kings 1, starting with chapter 10. As always, I want to remind everybody I'm not a professional scholar of Scripture, I just wanted to study it. We can go ahead and jump on in. You could follow along in English on Chabad.org. Let's begin with Kings 1, chapter 10, verse 1. When the queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame because of the name of the Lord, and she came to test him with riddles, and she came to Jerusalem with a very large retinue, with camels bearing spices and very much gold and precious stones, and when she came to Solomon, she spoke with him all that was in her heart. And Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was hidden from the king that he did not tell her. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all of Solomon's wisdom, and the house that he had built, and the food on his table, and the seating of his servants, and the station of his attendants, and their attire, and his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he would go up to the temple of the Lord, she was breathless. And she said to the king, "It was a true report that I heard in my country of your deeds and your wisdom. However, I did not believe the words until I came and saw them with my own eyes, and I have beheld that not even a half had been told to me. You have wisdom and goodness in excess of that which I have heard. Fortunate are your men, fortunate are these your servants, who always stand before you and listen to your profound wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who preferred to place you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's love for Israel forever, he appointed you as king to do justice and righteousness." And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and very many spices and precious stones. There had never arrived such an abundance of spices as those which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Also, Hiram's ships that delivered gold from Ophir brought from Ophir a huge quantity of almug wood and precious stones. And the king made of the almug wood a path to the house of the Lord and to the king's palace, harps and psalteries to accompany the vocalists. There had come no such almug wood, nor has there been seen to this day. And King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba all her wish that she requested, aside from what he gave her, according to King Solomon's ability, and she turned and went to her land, she and her servants. The weight of gold which came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, aside from that which came through merchants and the commerce of spice peddlers, and all the dependent kings and the regents of the land. And King Solomon made 200 body shields of malleable gold. 600 dinar gold he would put into one body shield. And 300 shields of beaten gold. 3 manes, 300 dinar, of gold he would put into one shield. And the king placed them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. And the king made an immense ivory throne, and overlaid it with glittering gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and the top of the throne was circular from behind, and there were arms on both sides by the place of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the arms. And 12 lions stood there on the 6 steps, on one side and on the other. No such throne was made for any kingdom. And all of the king's drinking vessels were of gold, and all of the utensils of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None was of silver, since it was reckoned with as nothing in the days of Solomon. For the king had at sea ships of Tarshish with Hiram's ships. Once in 3 years the ships of Tarshish would come bearing gold and silver, ivory, and monkeys and peacocks. Now King Solomon transcended all the kings of the earth in affluence and wisdom, and all the inhabitants of the earth sought Solomon's presence to hear the wisdom with which God had endowed him. And each one would bring his gift, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, garments, weapons, spices, horses, and mules, the tribute due each year in its year. Solomon assembled chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen. He led them in the chariot cities, and with the king in Jerusalem. And the king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedars as common as sycamores, that are in the low lands in abundance. And the source of Solomon's horses was from Egypt, and an assemblage. The agents of the king would buy the assemblage privileges for a price. A chariot that went up and left Egypt went for a price of 600 silver pieces, and a horse for 150, and so for all the kings of the Hittites, and for the kings of Aram did they export them through them. End of chapter 10. So here we learn about Solomon's ongoing reign, starting with the Queen of Sheba. She is a queen from a foreign land who brings a great many offerings and gifts, but she arrives with doubt about Solomon's greatness. She's come to see it for herself and hear it for herself. So she witnesses all that he has. She witnesses the house that he has built. She sees everything, the servants, their stations, the attire, the quality of the utensils, the cups, everything. The path that he would take to go to the temple. This guy is incredible. And she says to him, Solomon, king, I heard about how great you are, and I didn't believe it until I laid my own eyes on you. And now that I've done so, I realize I didn't even hear half of the truth about how great you are. So the takeaway, he blew her away with his grandeur and his wisdom. She gives him 120 talents of gold, many spices and precious stones. It says, it was so much spice that it never before or since had anybody given this much. Or at least up to that point, nobody's ever given so much spice. Now, in response, it notes that Hiram's ships arrive with gold as well. So he's got his recurring precious metal harvest going on. And so he has almug wood also from this. And so he builds a path to the house of the Lord and to the palace, as well as instruments to accompany the vocalists who are going to be doing prayers and so on. And there is never more before or since of almug wood delivered. Now, it says that King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba all her wish that she requested, aside from what he gave her, according to King Solomon's ability. So, what it says here basically is, not only did he give her according to what he could afford to give, but also anything she asked. So, it would suggest that the two of them had a very close relationship, or at least for some reason he favored her greatly. Now it says here, after this she turned and went her way with her servants. Next is the weight of gold which came to Solomon in 1 year, 666 talents. Ooh, a dangerous number. But I digress. So it's basically, he's doing quite well for himself. 200 body shields of malleable gold. I assume that means body armor, right? Because then he also makes shields, 300 shields of beaten gold, and so on. And they were worth 300 dinar in each shield. And he placed them in the house of the forest of Lebanon, meaning he placed them in the holy temple, which was built out of the cedars of Lebanon. Next, it says he made an immense ivory throne and overlaid it with glittering gold. So once again, we have a continuation of him just glorifying all these things and these magnificent thrones with lion fixtures and all sorts of beautiful things. 12 lions, I assume that refers to the 12 tribes. Nevertheless, everything about him was gold, gold, gold. Silver was basically worthless in this time because of how much silver they had. So it says that he was the richest and wisest king on earth, and he also would get these ships coming in on behalf of Hiram, and his own ships as well of Tarshish, bringing gold, silver, ivory, monkeys, and peacocks. Okay. And people all over the world would come to get his wisdom and hear him, and from here we also see that he's just always receiving presents and gifts and offerings of all kinds. And so it also notes he has a massive army of horsemen and chariots. He also has, as I mentioned, all this common silver everybody now has. And it says that the horses came from Egypt, and assemblage of the agents of the king would buy the assemblage privileges for a price. So basically, everything would be purchased for, and then it says here, a chariot that went up and left Egypt went for a price of 600 silver pieces, a horse for 150. For all the kings of the Hittites and for the kings of Aram did they export them through them. So basically, to provide chariots and horses, they went through this process with the Egyptians. Now moving on to chapter 11, verse 1. King Solomon loved many foreign women and the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites. Of the nations about which the Lord had said to the children of Israel, you shall not go mingle among them, and they shall not come among you, for certainly they will sway your heart after their deities. To these did Solomon cleave to love. And he had 700 royal wives and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. And it was at the time of Solomon's old age that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not whole with the Lord, his God, like the heart of David his father. And Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. And Solomon did what was displeasing to the Lord, and he was not completely devoted to the Lord, as was David his father. Then did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the mountain that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And so he did for all of his alien wives who offered incense and slaughtered sacrifices to their deities. And the Lord became angry with Solomon, because his heart had digressed from the Lord, God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice, and had commanded him pertaining this matter not to follow other gods. However, he did not keep what the Lord had commanded. And the Lord said to Solomon, For as this has been with you, and you have not observed my covenant and my statutes which I have commanded to you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you, and I shall give it to your servant. However, in your days I will not do this, for the sake of David your father. From the hands of your son I shall tear it. But I shall not tear the entire kingdom away from you. One tribe I shall grant to your son for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen. And the Lord raised up an adversary against Solomon, Hadad, the Edomite. He was of the royal lineage in Edom. And it was when David was in Edom that Joab, the commander of the army, had gone up to bury the slain, since he had slain every male in Edom. For Joab and all of Israel remained stationed there for 6 months until he had killed every male in Edom. Hadad fled, he and some Edomite men, of his father's servants with him, to go to Egypt, Hadad being yet a small child. And they set out from Midian and came to Paran, and they took men with them from Paran, and they arrived in Egypt and came before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. He granted him a home and assigned him sustenance and gave him land. And Hadad pleased Pharaoh very much, so that he gave him in marriage the sister of his wife, the sister of Tachpenes the queen. And the sister of Tachpenes bore him Genubat his son, whom Tachpenes weaned in Pharaoh's house. And Genubat was in Pharaoh's house among Pharaoh's children. Hadad heard in Egypt that David slept with his fathers, and that Joab, the commander of the army, had died. And Hadad said to Pharaoh, Give me leave, and I shall go to my country. And Pharaoh said to him, What do you lack with me that you desire to go to your country? And he said, Nevertheless, give me leave. And God raised up against him an adversary, Rezon the son of Eliada, who had fled from Hadadezer, the king of Zobah, his master. And he assembled men around him, and he became commander over a battalion when David slew them. And they went to Damascus and settled there and ruled in Damascus. And he was an adversary to Israel all of Solomon's days with the evil that was caused by Hadad, and he detested Israel and ruled over Aram. And Jeroboam, the son of Nabat, an Ephraimite of Zeradah, whose mother's name was Zeruah, a widow, he was Solomon's servant. He raised his hand against the king. And this was the matter concerning which he raised his hand against the king. Solomon built up the Millo and closed up the breach of the city of David his father. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. And Solomon saw this young man, and that he was a diligent worker, and he appointed him in charge of all the burdens of the house of Joseph. And it came to be at the time when Jeroboam had left Jerusalem, that Ahijah the Shilonite, the prophet, found him on the way. And he was wearing a new garment, and the two of them were alone in the field. And Ahijah grasped the new garment that was upon him, and tore it into 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, Take for yourself 10 pieces, for so has the Lord, the God of Israel, said, I shall tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hands, and shall give you the 10 tribes. But he will have 1 tribe, for my servant David's sake, and for the Jerusalem's sake, for the city which I have chosen of all the tribes of Israel. Since they have deserted me, and have prostrated themselves to Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, to Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, and they have not walked in my ways, to do what is right in my eyes, to keep my statutes and judgments, as did David his father. However, I will not take any part of the kingdom away from him, but I will make him a king all the days of his life, for the sake of David my servant, whom I chose, for he kept my commandments and my statutes. However, I will take the kingdom away from his son, and will give it to you, to the 10 tribes. And his son I shall give 1 tribe, so that David my servant may have a kingdom before me in Jerusalem, the city which I chose for myself to place my name there. And I shall take you, and you shall rule over all that your soul desires, and you shall be king over Israel. And it will be, if you heed all that I shall command you, and will walk in my ways, and do what is right in my eyes, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did. And I shall be with you, and build for a lasting dynasty, as I have built for David my servant. and I shall give Israel to you. And I shall afflict David's descendants because of this, but not for all times. Solomon sought to put Jeroboam to death, but Jeroboam arose and fled to Egypt to Shishak, the king of Egypt, and remained in Egypt until Solomon's death. The rest of the events of Solomon and all that he did and his wisdom, they are assuredly written in the book of the words of Solomon. The years which Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel were 40 years, and Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son ruled in his place. End of chapter 11. So a few things going on here. We find out about the great fall of Solomon from grace. He has many, many wives. He has, according to this, between wives and concubines, 1,000. Now remember, the Torah does say a king should not take so many wives. Solomon did that anyway. Beyond this, even worse, he has started following and worshiping and giving some of his heart to the deities of these wives he loves so much. So this makes God jealous. More prudently, Solomon broke the covenant. He broke the deal. And now, what are the consequences? I'm taking away the kingdom. You've lost the mandate of heaven. It's going to go to a servant of yours because you have broken your promises to me. And so it won't happen this generation, but after you, your children will lose the throne. So moving along, it says a little bit about some adversaries. So adversaries against Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. So he was a prince of Edom, of royal lineage, and during the time of David, when Joab was going around killing everybody, slaying all the males, this guy managed to escape. And so he fled with some other Edomites, and they go to Hadad flees, and Hadad, his son, presumably, is the one who we're talking about now. So they escape, and they go from Midian and come to Paran, and then they go from Paran to Egypt, and before the Pharaoh, they basically settle in. Pharaoh gives them a home and sustenance, so he basically gives them allowances and gives them some land, because Pharaoh's just such a nice guy. And Hadad continues to please Pharaoh so much that he says, you can have my sister-in-law. So from here, he then has a son, Genubat, whom Tachpenes weaned in Pharaoh's house. This is the Egyptian queen weaning this guy's son. And this boy is raised among Pharaoh's children. So then he overhears that David has died, and David is the one who gave the order to kill all the men, right? And so he says, let me go back to my home country of Edom. And Pharaoh says, well, why should you leave? Why would you want to go? What don't I give you? And basically the response is, even though you give me everything, please let me go. And so next he's got Rezon, the son of Eliada. This is someone who fled from Hadadezer, the king of Zobah, his master. So this is another adversary that will rise up against Solomon. So basically it's referring to different people who are going to give Solomon trouble. So let's see. He was an adversary to Israel all of Solomon's days with the evil that was caused by Hadad, and he detested Israel and ruled over Aram. So here we also see that when David was slaying people, this guy had assembled men around him and was a commander over the battalion when David slew them. So then these people went off to Damascus and were in charge there for a while. So it says, Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite of Zerada, whose mother's name was Zeruah, a widow. He was Solomon's servant. He raised his hand against the king. And this was the matter concerning which he raised his hand. So basically, he's giving issue with the king because Solomon builds up Millo and closes up the breach of the city of David. Okay. And so he basically is, he sees this guy as a tough young guy, so he puts him in charge of all this labor. He puts him in charge of all the burdens of the house of Joseph. So at this time, he's on the road, and he's running the show out there, and suddenly a prophet named Ahijah the Shilonite finds him and takes his garment. And he rips it up and says, here's 12 pieces, you take 10, because God says, I'm going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hands and give you the 10 tribes. But he's going to keep one tribe for David's sake and Jerusalem. And so from here, This is because they have abandoned the ways, basically, and they're worshiping these foreign gods. So this is the punishment. But he's not going to do it to Solomon directly. It's going to happen in the next generation because for David's sake, he's not going to do it. So moving on from there, though, his son will get one tribe. You're going to get the rest. And I'm going to be in charge, and I'm going to rule over all of Israel. You'll rule over, and you can get whatever you want, basically. So as long as you follow my rules and observe my statutes, I will be with you and build for you a lasting dynasty. So, and also David's descendants will pay for their transgressions, but not for all time. So basically there's going to be a bit of a curse on David's family for a while. So at this, Jeroboam is put to death, but he escapes, and he goes to Egypt to Shishak, the king of Egypt. And so he remains there under the pharaoh named Shishak until Solomon dies. And it says that the rest of the events of Solomon's life and of his wisdom are in the book of Solomon, the book of the words of Solomon. So you could say like Psalms or something to this effect. But beyond this, he's dead. He ruled over Israel for 40 years. And it says he went on to his ancestors, right? He slept with his fathers, buried in the city of David. And then his son Rehoboam ruled in his place. So this is now the story of where we're going to pivot into that transition. Now let's go ahead and move over to chapter 12, the final chapter for this week's episode. Verse 1 of chapter 12 from Kings 1. And Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone to Shechem to make him king. And it was when Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard of this, when he was yet in Egypt, where he had fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam had settled in Egypt. And they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Your father made our yoke hard. Now you lighten your father's hard work, and his heavy yoke which he placed upon us, and we shall serve you. And he said to them, Go away for 3 days, then return again to me. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam took counsel with the elders who had attended Solomon his father while he was yet alive, saying, What counsel do you give me to reply to this people? And they spoke to him, saying, If you will be a servant to this people today, and you will minister them, and you will respond to them, and speak kind words to them, then they will be your servants for all times. But he disregarded the counsel of the elders who advised him, and he took counsel with the young men who had grown up with him, and who were attending him. And he said to them, What do you advise that we reply to this people who have spoken to me, saying, Lighten the burden which your father has placed upon us? And the young men that had grown up with him spoke to him, saying, So shall you say to this people who have spoken to you, saying, Your father has made our yoke heavy, and you make it lighter for us. Thus shall you speak to them, My little finger is thicker than my father's loins. And now where my father did burden you with a heavy yoke, I shall add to your yoke. My father flogged you with whips, but I will flog you with scorpions. Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the 3rd day, as the king had spoken, saying, Return to me on the 3rd day. The king replied to the people harshly, and he disregarded the counsel of the elders which they had advised him. And he spoke to them as the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, and I shall add to your yoke. My father flogged you with whips, and I shall flog you with scorpions. The king did not listen to the people, for it was something brought about by the Lord, in order to fulfill his word, that the Lord had spoken through Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. And all of Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, and they replied to the king, saying, What share do we have in David, and no heritage in Jesse's son? To your homes, O Israel! Now see your house, David. And the Israelites went to their homes. As regards the children of Israel who dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam ruled over them. And King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was in charge of the tax, and all of Israel pelted him with stones. And he died, and King Rehoboam exerted himself to get up into his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel revolted against the house of David until this day. And it came to be, when all of Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, that they sent and called him to the assembly, and they made him king over all Israel. There was none that followed the house of David except the tribe of Judah alone. And Rehoboam came to Israel, and he assembled all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen warriors, to wage war with the house of Israel, to return the kingdom to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. And the word of God was to Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, Speak to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and the rest of the people, saying, Thus said the Lord, you shall not go up, and you shall not war with your brothers, the children of Israel. Return each man to his home, for this thing has been brought about by me. And they heeded the word of the Lord, and they returned to go home, in accordance with the word of the Lord. And Jeroboam built Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim, and lived there, and he went from there and built the city of Penuel. Jeroboam then said to himself, Now the kingdom may return to the house of David. When this people goes up to offer sacrifices in the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, the hearts of this people will turn to their master, to Rehoboam, the king of Judah, and they shall kill me and return to Rehoboam, the king of Judah. The king took counsel and made 2 golden calves, and he said to them, saying, It is far for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, that have brought you up from the land of Egypt. And he placed one in Bethel, and the other he placed in Dan. And this thing became a sin, and the people went before the one even until Dan. And he made the house of high places, the house of altars, and he made priests of some of the people who were not the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam made a festival in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month, like the festival which was in Judah. And he brought up offerings on the altar. So he did in Bethel to slaughter the calves which he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. And he brought up offerings on the altar which he has made in Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th month, in the month that he had fabricated from his heart. And he made a festival for the children of Israel, and he went up to the altar to burn the incense. End of chapter 12. So here we learn about the happenings. So we've got Rehoboam and Jeroboam. This is a bit confusing for me, I will admit. Their names are back and forth. So let's look at this. Jeroboam and Rehoboam. So Solomon's son is Rehoboam. Jeroboam is the son of Nebat, just to make sure we broke it down there. So let's now fast forward here. We'll use the letter J here. We'll call him Jeroboam and Rehoboam. So it's very hard. So we'll call them R and J. Okay? So R is once again Solomon's son. J is the new anointed king that's a man of valor from another tribe. So J, he hears that Solomon is dead. He comes back. And so they tell R, the son of Solomon, all of Israel says, your dad really worked us very hard. Why don't you make our life easier and make our work less? And so he says, I need 3 days to think about this. So R talks to his advisors, Solomon's advisors, and they tell them, or they give him the advice to lighten the load on the people, and they will serve you forever. Now, he asks his buddies who are his age, and they all say, nah, do the opposite. Make it harder on them. And so he's like, well, obviously I'm going to listen to my friends, not these wise sages. So that's exactly what happens. So R, son of Solomon, tells them, I'm going to make your lives harder. I'm going to flog you with scorpions instead of whips. So it says that this happened because God made it happen. Now what comes next is everybody's like, you know what? Forget you. What are we even serving you for? What share do we have in David? In other words, what is our portion of the son of Jesse? Now this has been said before, but this time they have an actual point because these guys are facing a genuine tyrant who's going to be a jerk. So they say, forget this. Everybody, let's go home. And so R, son of Solomon, he rules over Judah and all the children of Israel who live in the cities of Judah. So even if they're from other tribes, if they're within Judah, they serve him. Now, he sends his tax collector, Adoram, to go collect the taxes in Israel. And what they do is they throw stones at him and kill him. And so in response to this, R, son of Solomon, flees to Jerusalem in his chariot. And so it says that Israel revolted against the house of David until this day. And now it says that J, they hear that J returned, so they're all saying, hey, J, we want you to be our king. So that's exactly what happens. They make him a king over all Israel except for the tribe of Judah. Now son of Solomon, comes to Jerusalem, assembles all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen warriors. They're going to go to war against Israel. So, interestingly, this is the tribes of Judah and Benjamin together. But then God sends the prophet, and he says, listen, son of Solomon, God is the one who made all this happen. So don't go to war with the Israelites, because that is not the move. I wanted this to happen. So they obey, and they all go back to their homes. And it says that built Shechem in the mountain of Ephraim and lived there. Then says, now the kingdom may return to the house of David. When this people goes up to offer sacrifices in the temple, the hearts of this people will turn they'll go back to the old king. So that's his concern. If the people who call me king now return to the holy temple, which, keep in mind, they have to do so at some point because of the festivals, they're going to go to the holy temple, and he says when they do that, they're all going to go back to the old king. So he gets advice. He is told, you should build 2 calves, right? So it says, the king took counsel and made 2 golden calves. What was he thinking? What were you thinking? And he's basically saying, it's far for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods. So instead of you going to Jerusalem, you can go right here. O Israel, these are the gods that brought you up from the land of Egypt. What is going on here? What is this guy's idiot? Okay, well, he was living in Egypt, wasn't he? So maybe that's the problem. He's been influenced by the Egyptians. Or the people giving him advice are just terrible, terrible advisors. Either way, he places 1 in Bethel, which is, again, remember, this is a sacred place, and also 1 in Dan, the tribe of Dan. It says, this thing became a sin. The people went before the one even until Dan. So it's just basically saying everybody is now falling into this horrible sin under this king that God has appointed for some reason. And it says, he made the house of high places and made priests of some of the people who are not of the sons of Levi. So he is changing all the rules. He's creating new high temples, and he's putting in priests that should not be priests according to the Torah. And so he makes a festival in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month, just like the one in Judah, and he brings up offerings, and he also does in Bethel and so on. And then he also brings up offerings, let's see, it says here, he brought up offerings on the altar which he has made in Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th month, in the month that he had fabricated from his heart. And he made a festival for the children of Israel, and he went up to the altar to burn the incense. So basically, this dude has gone totally off the rails, right? He is just doing things like totally made up. This is going to surely be a problem. I wouldn't be surprised if he dies in the next chapter. This is very bad. But what's basically happening is this guy who's been appointed king after living in exile and whatnot, he is coming back, and he is basically breaking all the rules as the king of Israel, bringing back the golden calf, bringing back all sorts of problems, putting non-Levite priests in charge. He is basically stirring the ultimate recipe for disaster. It's worse than even what's going on in Judah. So we'll see how that turns out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Weekly Parashahcast Season 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something new. Tune in next time where we'll be continuing with the next chapter, 13 of the Book of Kings 1. Until then, as always, I say, Baruch Hashem.